MultiGreen, building attainable, sustainable, and tech-enabled multifamily real estate through impact investing.
Welcome to the MultiGreen podcast. I'm your host, Randy Norton, and today I have the pleasure of being interviewed by Cristina Alesci, a business and political correspondent for CNN. Known for her in-depth coverage of financial markets, economic policy, and campaigns, Alesci has been featured on Anderson Cooper 360, The Lead with Jake Tapper, The Situation Room with Wolf Blitzer, Erin Burnett Out Front, and Newsroom. Alesci delivers original reporting and analysis on breaking financial and economic news and trends. Alesci joined CNN from Bloomberg Television, where she broke news on some of the biggest deals of the decade. And now we have her here today to discuss our decade ahead and the case for MultiGreen. Enjoy our conversation.
Randy, it's great to be here with you today and to come full circle on Season 0 podcast. Now, after listening to these amazing guests that you've been speaking with over the past 28 episodes, I'm excited to dive in a little deeper on the why, the motivation behind MultiGreen. Now, you know, there are so many people trying to innovate and trying to make the world a better place. I hear it all the time as a journalist. What is MultiGreen bringing to the table that can actually move the needle?
Well, we have an expertise in real estate and in technology, and we're coupling that together with intentional capital for the first time that I'm aware of, Cristina. We are backed by 60 of the leading families of the world, and with their assistance and their guidance, we are investing in systems and infrastructure to look at the long term and not the short term of investing and making a difference. A lot of people have a wish of making short-term impact, but you really have to look at the long-term effects of some of these decisions and commitments that we're making as families. So I would say if there's a why, it's because we have 60 families who have answered the call to step up and make the world a better place.
So you have this ambitious goal of 40,000 units built by 2030. Why so specific, and why is the time frame so important to you?
When we launched from the World Economic Forum last year, Cristina, we knew that all of the goals were resetting by 2030. And we've never heard of or seen anybody make such an ambitious commitment to affordable or attainable housing. And if you really look at our housing supply need, it's about 4.6 million units that are outstanding in the United States today.
Wow.
And that's just the United States. We're not even looking at the global housing crisis. So if we can just take off about 1% of that 4.6 million, somewhere, give or take, we are targeting 40,000 units. Now, if we did that, it would make us about a top 25 owner of multifamily real estate in the United States. And to my knowledge, this has never been done before in the history of the United States.
Just by addressing that 1%, you would be responsible for 28% of the affordable housing units. Is that right?
Now, I want to very carefully explain the difference between attainable and affordable, just so our audience knows. We are not necessarily pursuing affordable exclusively because that's a subsidized unit or a subsidized home. We are targeting more of the attainable and the entry-level workforce housing home for firefighters, police officers, teachers, data center technicians. These individuals have great credit, great income, but they're being priced out, and this is the missing middle. So we're not looking for step-up housing or for subsidized housing or Section 8 housing, and we're not looking for high-end housing either. We're trying to find something in the middle.
I love the missing middle, yeah. So you want to have an impact on 4 key areas. You're trying to change the attainable housing industry and really address the missing middle. You're trying to impact the dynamics around profits and returns. And you're trying to make an impact on the environmental and social outcomes here. Can you go a bit deeper in each of these categories and what specific impact you want to have?
You bet. If you just take a step back, everything right now is about ESG and impact-driven investments. And we were doing this long before this became a trend. But in the United States, there's about 124 million occupied housing units. And if you just look at the renter side, there's about 18.5 million units that are 5+ units. There's about 15.5 million single-family rentals. There's about 7 million attached townhomes, and there's about 2 million manufactured housing homes. And there's about 43 million renters. When you look at the housing formation, we need to address all four of these categories to make a real difference. And let me just explain what I mean. Attainable, there is all sorts of strata of income of the distribution curve. And again, it's the missing middle that is being ignored. The same people that are doing the essential work for us now during COVID-19, these are the same individuals that are living out of hotels, and there's a lack of housing for them. It's just unbelievable. So first and foremost, we want to make attainable the definition going forward and have some thought leadership around that. We're calling this Workforce Plus. The next thing we're trying to address is environmental issues. Our industry is one of the biggest culprits of the carbon footprint and inefficiency of materials. I think the Construction Institute once said that over 60% of all materials that get to the construction site are wasted, whether that's time, material, or labor. And you're looking at a lot of materials that goes to the waste yard. We need to be more efficient with that and be nicer on our environment. And if you look at making an industrial change, we think that the industry can do a lot better with incorporating technology, and this is where everyone's missing it. We're technologists first and finance professionals second, and because of that, we think we can have some thought leadership behind this in developing much more efficient ways to process and streamline the production of homes. Now, we're not trying to produce or manufacture or be all things to everybody. We're simply a capital provider stepping up saying, hey, we want to have a seat at the table from day one and guide the ship and put our fingerprints all over it. Because at the end of the day, we are the final owner of these assets. We're not just a merchant builder trying to make a quick buck and move on. And that means we have to exit in a responsible way to make a real impact on these communities. I think it's a minimum of a 10-year commitment. And lastly, we want to make a financial impact. We think that if we're more efficient with our capital, both on the equity and debt side, lenders are going to have better asset coverage and the equity participants are going to have better returns, and there's going to be a lot less fees in the middle. And all of those cost savings are saved with our residents.
So this is the idea of basically doing the right thing profitable.
In a profitable way, that's right. A profit with a purpose.
So as you look forward, what are you predicting for this sector, this new sector of the housing market and for MultiGreen specifically?
Well, I think near and long-term growth assumptions are increasing in select Sunbelt markets. And I think some of the gateway cities like New York and San Francisco and others, I don't know if they're going to be quick to return like they were in the previous market cycles. They will eventually return, but right now the trend is definitely people moving to the suburbs and to the secondary markets. And I think that will be a continual trend. I think that mortgage lending will be tightening with the Biden administration. And I think just naturally the economics of what's happening in the economy, I think there will be people forced to rent. I think that the tenants do not have the balance sheet or the credit sometimes to qualify, but I think you're going to see some interesting dynamics there. And I still think that the home price appreciation is outpacing the wage growth. And until that happens, this is going to be a perpetual structural issue in our society.
Yeah. As a native New Yorker, I just want to say New York will be back.
Absolutely.
I have full confidence of that. Randy, I'm going to throw out a few quotes to you, and I'd like you to react to them. And they're all from the 2020 World Economic Forum. I'm going to kick it off with Mark Benioff, who's, of course, the CEO of Salesforce. He says, quote, "This obsession we have with maximizing profits for shareholders alone has led to incredible inequality and a planetary emergency."
It's absolutely right. I think that as a capitalist myself and as someone that's trying to maximize returns, I don't think that everyone thinks that way. I think that the new trend is certainly trying to make a difference and be inclusive of all shareholders, all employees, and all stakeholders. And I think Mark nailed it. I think this is a huge change. And in this decade, I think you're going to see the United States pave the way. There's other countries that are already doing this. and you see the thought leadership that happens at the World Economic Forum, I think it's starting to spill over into countries, even here in the United States.
And this next one is from Professor Klaus Schwab. He says business leaders now have an incredible opportunity. By giving stakeholder capitalism concrete meaning, they can move beyond their legal obligations and uphold their duty to society. They can bring the world closer to achieving shared goals, such as those outlined in the Paris Climate Agreement and the United Nations Sustainable Development Agenda. If they really want to leave their mark on the world, there is no alternative.
Oh, that's a great quote by Klaus. I would say that there's empirical evidence stating that circular economics and people that are trying to incorporate the Sustainable Development Goals and even the Paris Accord are becoming more and more efficient with their capital, and returns are going to actually increase over the long term. And in fact, if you're a corporation or a shareholder that is not vigilant about this, I think that there's going to be depressing returns over time. Many of the issues that we have today are absolutely related around climate and migration and demographic trends. And there's a lot of societal unrest because of it, whether it's, intercontinental or just within our own 50 states. We saw that the damages of Katrina when that came and all the unsettling unrest that happened there. There's a lot of negative effects that happens from climatology, and we need to fix it. So we can all do better. And I think, again, the World Economic Forum and with his leadership, Professor Klaus, we are making a difference. And again, we're going to all collectively measure these goals by 2030. And it's going to be great when we come back 10 years from now and the world absolutely is statistically, undeniably a better place.
That's a very optimistic way of looking at it, that you're very confident that the world can step up and meet these goals in effectively 10 years or these goals have to be achieved by 2030, right?
I think what's happening is different benchmarks are occurring at 2030, and then there's some that you're starting to see at 2040 and some at 2050. Many of the zero carbon initiatives are 2050. The Urban Land Institute has kind of a two-phased approach where 2030, you're trying to cut your carbon footprint in half and eliminate it by 2050. So the Sustainable Development Goals, I think, will be reset, and we're going to measure collectively through, individuals like Bill Gates and his goalkeepers. We will come back at 2030 and see where we're at. I guess the trajectory of any one of these 17 SDGs or any other goals will shift at the time. So I want to push forth as many units as possible by that time. And by the way, Cristina, we're just one of many multifamily, affordable housing developers that are needed. If we're only doing 40,000 units, that means we need at least 99 other companies like MultiGreen to even put a dent in this crisis.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it really puts the scale of the problem into perspective. The next quote is from German Chancellor Angela Merkel. And she says, the whole way we do business, that we live, and that we've grown accustomed to in the industrial age will have to be changed. We'll have to leave that behind us in the next 30 years. And we have to come to a completely new value chains.
She's spot on. And the European Union has been leading this initiative for a couple of decades now, Cristina, as you know. Every time we're out there, almost every asset manager absolutely requires that each investment is ESG driven. In the United States, I don't know why we're so far behind, but I'm starting to feel a change. This all comes back to circular economics, sustainable materials, taking a lead approach to design and the as-built environment. The as-built environment has been the problem. And if you start looking there, I think a lot of the other issues are going to be solved. And so the problem with that is these assets are typically 30 or 40 years in depreciation value. And until they are functionally obsolete, they will not be replaced. You can't replace the Empire State Building. This is a great example of it being retrofitted and brought current into the modern age. And they made a digital twin. They made it a LEED Platinum building. And now it's one of the best examples of any asset in the world. And I think when Angela Merkel makes quotes like that, you have to look at buildings like the Empire State Building as an example.
I love that. New York leading the way.
Absolutely.
Okay, Randy. So you're going to have a very busy next 9 years of trying to get to these 40,000 units built by 2030, and also remake capitalism and address the affordable housing crisis in this country. Ambitious goals, and I'm certainly going to be watching to see if you get it done.
Thanks, Cristina.
Thank you for listening. Join us as we build 40,000 attainable, sustainable, and tech-enabled multifamily homes by 2030. And if you like the content you're hearing, hit the subscribe button. Follow us at Think MultiGreen and sign up to learn more at www.multi.green.